Pedro Sánchez and Minister Oscar Puente caught during the trial of the Koldo scheme. Let's get started. Music. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Angel Perez, just arrived from the Supreme Court. And I'm here to tell you all the latest information about what happened in a new session of the trial on the Koldo scheme, which is taking place at the Supreme Court. And pay attention today because Pedro Sánchez and the Minister of Transport, Oscar Puente, have been caught during the trial of the Koldo scheme by a series of testimonies that I am going to tell you about right now. Next, and would certainly leave them in a very bad position. Let's just say they've been caught red-handed with the strategy they were planning. Let's share this information. Before anything else, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel with Miguel Angel Perez. We're close to 128,000, so you'll get the videos. Remember to hit the bell so you get notified as soon as we upload a video. Let's put it on the screen now. Here you have it, a court expert. He questions the audit on the Koldo scheme commissioned by Oscar Puente. There's a lack of transparency. That's what the court expert says. Let's analyze what happened during this session of the Koldo scheme trial. And first of all, before anything else, I have to tell you that when the Koldo scandal broke, well, Minister Oscar Puente, possibly following orders from Pedro Sánchez, commissioned an audit in the Ministry of Transport regarding the contracting of the company. Soluciones de gestión to buy the mask during the pandemic? What's happening? Well, Ábalos and Koldo's defense argue, and I think they have quite a bit of evidence to support it, that in reality that audit was a trap to, let's say, pin the whole blame for the corruption scheme on Ábalos and Koldo, and that it wouldn't go any higher, and that it couldn't affect, for example, the Minister of Transport himself, Oscar Puente, or even Pedro Sánchez. Let's say that audit would have served as a kind of firewall to prevent it from reaching the top, right? So today there was expert testimony. 3 technicians from the Ministry of Transport and a court expert have testified, and we're going to explain exactly what came out of it because it was very relevant. Here you have a photograph of Oscar Puente, the Minister of Transport. A court expert called to testify at the request of the defense has stated that there was a lack of transparency in the audit commissioned by the current Minister of Transport, Oscar Puente, regarding the award of the mass contract to the company involved in the scheme, Koldo Soluciones de Gestión. The defense strategies of the former Minister of Transport, José Luis Ábalos, and his former advisor, Koldo Garcia, have involved discrediting that audit commissioned by Puente within the ministry. A socialist sought to pin the ministry's corruption on Ábalos and Koldo. For this reason, this Thursday, the 3 technicians from the ministry who carried out the audit testified at the Supreme Court, accompanied by an expert witness who evaluated the report, and this expert witness was hired by the defense teams. Specifically, the expert Lourdes del Amo criticized the audit carried out by the ministry technicians Sara Anguita, Ana Balbas, and Belén Roel. And in fact, he described this audit commissioned by Puente as a document that clearly lacks transparency. He stated that the audit is biased and that it was intended to directly point to Koldo and Ábalos. He said verbatim, "I don't judge whether the audit is well or poorly done. I only point out that it contains biases and includes interpretative texts that stray from the procedure." For their part, the ministry's technicians who carried out the audit have argued that the document is an internal audit and does not have to meet the requirements of a public document. In fact, one of these technicians responded to the court expert by insisting that the audit does not contain value judgments, but rather cites the facts involving the former minister and his right-hand man. Likewise, these 3 auditors have confirmed that the ministry officials did not seek other offers or other possibilities for purchasing masks, apart from the proposal presented by Soluciones de Gestión, the company involved in the corruption scheme. Even so, they explained that their information is limited to the ministry and that they were not certain whether Puertos del Estado or ADIF had looked for other mass distribution companies. It should be noted that on another matter, the auditors have certified. In response to questions from the chief anti-corruption prosecutor, Alejandro Luzon, they stated that the change in the order from 4 to 8 million masks in the ministry's first order to Soluciones de Gestión was made in 13 minutes. That is, in 13 minutes, they suddenly changed from ordering 4 million masks to 8 million. In other words, the quantity of the first order was doubled in less than half an hour from the time the first purchase order was signed until the change was made. They ended up acquiring those 8 million masks through the state ports, but following the orders of Ábalos and Koldo. This has been the most important part of the morning during the trial. But it's also worth mentioning that a handwriting expert, Eugenia Perez, by the way, an acquaintance of mine, has also testified. And honestly, she did very well because it was a very quick intervention, but she got straight to the point. And she made it clear that she was the handwriting expert who examined the documents provided by Victor Daldama. Those handwritten documents with highlights in fluorescent colors, and that were supposedly written by Koldo Garcia himself, indicating projects that were going to be rigged in exchange for kickbacks. And indeed, this handwriting expert has confirmed that after conducting that handwriting test on Koldo Garcia months ago, and as we reported here, that report here on Medidas Cautelares, well, after carrying out that examination, that analysis, up to 20 handwriting traits have been found. Common in Koldo Garcia's handwriting, and that these are innate gestures, and that means it was Koldo Garcia, no doubt about it, the one who had written those markings. In those documents provided by Aldama, where indications were made about which companies should be assigned certain public works contracts, and then afterwards they took the money. That's what happened in the morning, and in the afternoon there was also another expert testimony. In this case, several civil guards and a couple of experts hired by Santos Cerdán attended. Was this expert testimony meant to prove something? Whether the audio files that are part of the proceedings, seized from Koldo's mobile devices and so on, could have been tampered with, or if those audios, as they were extracted from the devices, were exactly as they were and there had been no tampering. The civil guards, obviously the ones who made the report, have confirmed the report and have corroborated that after they studied those audios, there was no tampering. And what appears, those audios in which Ava, the Koldos, Santos Cerdán, and so on speak, are exactly as they are. The anecdote is that one of the two experts for Santos Cerdán, who also appeared via video call, it turns out that the private prosecution, whose lawyer is Alberto Duran, at one point during the questioning, asked one of those two experts hired by Santos Cerdán. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for counterfeiting bills, lottery tickets, and for drug trafficking. And indeed, the expert had to confirm that it was so, and that he was later pardoned by the government of Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero. And then he excused himself by saying that it was a long time ago, that he had already served part of his sentence, and that he has been cooperating with justice for a long time. This honestly may seem like a minor detail, but in the end it carries a lot of symbolism. That is, Santos Cerdán hires a person who has been sentenced to 8 years in prison for counterfeiting banknotes and lottery tickets and for drug trafficking. And it turns out that this person is in charge, as an expert, of questioning the work of the civil guard, which has validated those audios as authentic. Anyway, you already know that these things can only happen in our beloved Spain. And by the way, there was also a big argument between Koldo's lawyer, Leticia de la Hoz. The truth is, she's very, let's say, impulsive and says whatever comes to her mind. And the president of the court, Andres Martin Zarieta, had to ask her several times not to interrupt him. He told her to be quiet, to focus on asking questions. There was a bit of controversy there too, but honestly, it's the kind of controversy that has happened almost every day since the trial in the Koldo case began in the Supreme Court. That's all for this edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Perez. I hope you enjoyed the summary and that I answered one of your questions from yesterday in relation to the prosecution's filing about Begoña Gomez, in which they requested the case to be closed. And you asked me, does that mean that Begoña Gomez's case is going to be closed? No, the prosecutor is requesting it, but the one who has to decide is the Provincial Court of Madrid after Judge Peinado has indicted the wife of Pedro Sánchez for 4 crimes. What does our experience tell us so far? Well, the Provincial Court of Madrid has overturned some of Judge Peinado's rulings, but it has supported the bulk of the investigation. So I think that Begoña Gomez, no matter how much the prosecutor requests it, is not going to avoid standing trial. As I was saying, that's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. You can become a member like the Elegidos for under €3 a month, or the Supremos for under €7 a month. Leave me your comments, your opinions, and also your questions. And if you like the video, you already know you can share it with whoever you want, family, friends, or colleagues. As I always say, the key is making sure everyone gets this information because information is power. See you soon.